Hey guys, Julian here today. I've got one you've been requesting. We're going to be talking about how to make classic ambient jungle. As always, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, literally everything from this video is available at the top of the description on my website. Definitely don't miss out. The link is right there. It's super accessible and you get this really high quality template that'll help you make the best tracks of your life today. I promise this is one of the best jungle templates on the market and the most authentic. I have literally put years into studying this style. Even before I was making techno, I was trying to learn how to make this type of stuff. So I really know what I'm doing here, and I've put together a really high quality template. Definitely go grab that. You'll make your best tracks today. I promise. Guaranteed. Thank you so much for the support, guys, and let's dive in. So we're on 168 BPM, which is, not quite like modern drum and bass tempo, quote unquote. I think it gives it kind of a cool swing. Like if we put, let's say we put that up to just like 174, which would be like modern drum and bass, right? Or maybe like 172 even. But that 168, 167, oh, maybe 165 if you're feeling crazy. It just gives you that more like old school kind of groove to it. It's a subtle thing, but it really does make a difference, especially over the course of the track. And the first thing we have up here will be the drums. We'll get those out of the way. So what's happening here is it's this stack. So we got three things. We have this first breakbeat. Which you can see I did a bunch of chopping on that to kind of give it its own rhythm. And that really plays off. Yeah, it really is playing off of what that 808's doing. So we've got that. And then underneath it, there's this guy. What you can hear is this cool break because it's got that variation to it. And I think if you only had that on its own, it would get, it would be kind of unpredictable because it is that, 2-bar loop. But when you put that underneath this chop up here, all of a sudden, they're close. And that's part of this also, is I chopped this to fit with this. But you can hear it creates such a nice rhythm there between all those little snares dancing around each other. And that's really that classic jungle sound. The breaks aren't always just right on exactly the same chops. And that can get you further in terms of the classic sound than like, a tape saturation plugin ever would, right? So then we have this 808 hi-hat. This is a classic jungle technique. You have your break beats, which are kind of sitting, and then you just add this over it. All of a sudden your head starts bobbing, right? Like it's really adding that like kind of rhythm to it, and it seems like it wouldn't because it's just this tiny little sound, but if you mix these right, which is really no mixing, right? You can see you don't need really any effects on these, especially if we're trying to go old school, right? Like they were just sampling stuff into a sampler, putting it through a mixer. They weren't sitting here with like 3 drum buses on their breaks and like a whole bunch of compression, right? That was like the mastering people later. Just get 2 good breaks, let them sit really nicely together, and then this will sit right on top and give you that flow. And then the last element to this is this little fill break, this cool amen here. So what I did here is I took this half note chop, and then this, I want to show you guys how to get that classic stretched out jungle snare. So what we're doing here is I actually just took the snare and just like spread it way out. Like if I drag this out, see what I mean? Like I literally just took that X2 and just maxed it out. You can see I can't even do it anymore. So you get like, this steady break with these really like hectic patterns. And then all of a sudden, just one long, like that stretched out. And then it almost pulls you back into the next part. Like that, right? Versus if you just filled that with like another, like let's just, it's not as impactful as, it's almost like a transition, right? And that's not hard to do. You just take the snare, stretch it way out with this X2 here. If you really want to go crazy, set it to the beats mode or like texture. or tones or one of those. And there you go. That is that classic like Akai sampler stretched out sort of thing. And you can do this in Ableton. You don't need an Akai sampler. You don't need any plugin. It's just like right in there because it's the same thing that the samplers were doing to get that sound. But again, just having that one hit that slows everything down and then we hit back into it, it's perfect. So then we have these three things which kind of all go together. So these are kind of like these background ambient sounds, right? Like we have like this road stab, which is actually completely dry. You know, I think a lot of reverb or delay on something like this would make it muddy because of where it is in the frequency spectrum. It's a lot of low mids, so the reverb would just kind of add this muddy cloud. So I kept that dry. And then there's this vocal, you know, simple, pitched up, jungle type of vocal. And then this lead, which is actually our Wurlitzer. And what we're doing here is, so we're in the key of C sharp minor, right? And you can see if you look at this, it's like a very basic C sharp minor. Root note, ninth, minor third, fourth, fifth, right? Like the C sharp minor basic triad is those three notes. And then we're just adding these in between notes. And then it's just a nice rhythm with it, like dun 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 dun. You know, it's just playing with that. But once, you know, it's not that hard. This is like right if you Google C sharp minor scale, this is right there, you know? And what this is, so it's this whirly classic piano, you know, one of these like live Rhodes type of sounds. And then it's going through this pretty heavy echo with a bunch of reverb too. And that's really kind of like, you can see that works together with the notes to create a new pattern. Right, and you get that tense, like, kind of chord created because of all those, like, what those notes are doing, like the... See how those two together create, like, a kind of tension? And then it's all the notes adding up, coming through the echo, and you get this nice, like, wash over everything. And that's very old school sounding, too, with the tail ringing out. Then we just have a bit of drum bus to give it some flavor. And that is it for the Wurlitzer. Then we have the main pad. So, for the actual chords here, what we're doing, C sharp minor, E major, G sharp minor. So if we look at this, like, again, we're in the key of C sharp minor. So actually, the root notes to these, that's actually just the basic C sharp minor chord. Funny enough, like, it's literally just that. But then it's what we're doing with the chords. Like, so here, so we got this first one, C sharp minor. So we got root, we have a fifth. Then we have our minor third, so that's the basic C minor triad, but I put the third up an octave so you get that spread out, more like full epic sounding pad. And then we actually have a ninth up top. So this would technically be a C sharp minor 9, although we don't have a minor 7th, which is what you would typically have if you're doing a C sharp minor 9. So it's like a C sharp minor with an add 9, I guess. And then we've got this guy here. So this is just like a pretty basic. We're doing this like E major, but instead of like that would be the basic triad, instead we're doing like that. It's a ninth there instead of the third. And then here is just another, this is a G sharp minor with the add 9 again. So it's a pretty simple progression musically. It just sounds really epic, and it's the way you spread it across the keyboard, and it's very musical too. Like, this isn't just like a stab being pitched. This is like really consciously like trying to make this beautiful and as epic sounding as you can. Now, for the sound, it's made with 2 layers, and this is meant to kind of mimic what a lot of those old keyboards were doing back then. Because a lot of times, you know, those guys or those people would have like a keyboard, and that would kind of be it, like, oh, we need a pad? Okay, well, pull out the Chord Triton, or like whatever kind of keyboard it might have been, that was usually some kind of a sampler, or like a rompler, or something like that. So the goal of this is to recreate what those sounds are, and really, all those like fancy keyboard sounds what it really is just like layered things. Like that's what makes those like when you go to the store and they just have the keyboard and you turn it on and it's this big epic pad like what you heard in a lot of these old tracks. It's just layering of different sounds that have different movements. So the way I'm doing this here is we got one operator and then this choir. And you can hear right off the bat, they're two contrasting sounds. So that's the first thing with layering. You know, you don't want to just get two similar sounds. You want to get two things that are doing two different things, and then they can come together to make one really great thing. So for the operator patch, this is actually no FM happening. I'm just using operator because it sounds good. So we got a saw wave, a saw 6, which is like a saw wave just with less harmonics, some of that shaved off the top, and that's up a few octaves and detuned. And then we also have another saw wave up top, which is detuned even more. So if I take out those two oscillators, see, it's just like this. Then we get that. And then we get that. And it creates this nice chorusy sound when you detune those. We've got a low pass filter. And then an LFO, which is actually on the volume. And like I said, you're stacking together different movements. So while this airy choir is kind of like just steady, this thing is going in and out like that, and you're getting that like underneath that choir. And that's kind of what I was talking about there, like with the different movements. And that's a lot of what you're hearing, like I said, with these like classic keyboard sounds like these guys would use. And then for the choir, so this is a sample. What I've done is I've used a loop here, and if you bring down the start time, see how like if those are just at 100, the fade isn't doing anything? But then if you bring down the length and bring up the start time and then turn up the fade, you can get this endless pad like this because it's just going to constantly loop. And then I have a little bit of attack on that. So that's how that's like, again, like that's playing off of the operator pad because now we have one thing kind of going into it while the operator pad just hits. And then on both of those at the same time, I just have a little bit of chorus, you know, to spread it out a bit and give it some width and a bit of reverb to make it a bit more ambient. And then the last sound down here is the 808. So this might look complicated. It's actually just following the chord progression. So like I said, you know, we're starting at C sharp, E, G sharp. And if you look at this, this is actually a bit more obvious to tell that this is just a C sharp minor triad, this chord progression, because it walks right up. I don't think this is going to sound too good going much lower there. But really what this is about is grooving with the actual break, right? Like when the break goes, this is just like holding out that one long. And then when the kick hits again, you get dum dum, right? And you notice the kick is also doing dum dum at the same time as the 808. So it's creating this like synergistic rhythm between the break and the 808. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, because obviously when you hear this stuff, you think, oh, well, it's just break beats, right? And like a simple bass line. And then you try to do that, and all of a sudden the groove isn't there. The groove of these tracks is not in the breakbeat. It is in the breakbeat, but it's the contrast. It's not just the fact that there's a breakbeat. It's the fact that that is contrasting against this bass, which is also bouncing around kind of off of that. Like that. And also, you know, it's not really that hard. It's really just these like eighth note rhythms. Like, it's kind of like you get one long held out note, and then some dum 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 dum, like eighth note stuff, and then more long held out notes, right? Like that's kind of all you're doing here is you're like hanging on one bass note for a second, and then dropping dum 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 dum, and then more hanging on the bass notes, and just knowing when to let it ring out and when to have it dum 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 dum. Now, for the sound on this, it's actually just this dry 808. Again, I'm trying to show you guys, like, authentically how to do the stuff. I know back in the day, there's a bit of, like, I mean, if you really study what a lot of those people were doing, you know, there is a lot of that, like, 808 into a mixer and distorting it and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of this, like, more deep ambient stuff, like, you really don't want to overprocess this. I mean, I could throw a saturator on here. I could throw some type of multi-band distortion chain and say, oh yeah, it's doing this and this. But in terms of like that would really just be for the sake of the video. Like, to really show you what is done, you literally just want a very good 808. Like, if you listen, this is like a really fat 808, and just let it shine. You don't need to overprocess it or do a whole bunch of stuff. Another thing that makes the 808 work is we're not using an extra kick or even an extra snare, right? Like, if you listen to the breakbeat, you know, we're just letting the kicks and the snares that happen in here shine and kind of mixing it the best, like bringing this one up so you really get the impact of that kick and snare that are in there. But if you tried to have a kick and this 808, even if you sidechained it, you would get, it just wouldn't, well, for one, it wouldn't really be that authentic, but you wouldn't really, it just wouldn't be able to let the 808 shine so much. Like, that's when you would have to start sitting there and compressing them together and doing all this extra stuff, when, like, you know, just let it shine, get the kick and snare from the drum break by not overprocessing the drum break and really letting it shine where it needs to in the mix. And then this 808 will just slide right under there. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, literally everything from this video is available right at the top of the description. Go ahead and grab that. You know, it's meant to be a very accessible price so that everybody can grab it and make the best music of their life today. This does really help support me. I don't make a whole lot of YouTube, but I'm not creating it for that. It's genuinely created because I'm trying to make the highest quality resources at the most accessible rate that you guys can all get and really take your tracks to the next level. You know, I want to demystify this stuff, and this is a great way to do it. You can grab this template, and I promise you today, you'll make the best jungle track of your life. Thank you so much for the support, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.